I think my wife thought I might have answered too quickly, but that's my first reaction. Without apology or explanation, I miss CBS. I've missed it since the day I left there. I had a good run, I know that.
When you hit 93, you've earned a break. A quiet retirement with your biggest achievements in the rearview mirror seems about right. But Dan Rather is not most people. At an age where the world expects silence, he's louder than ever. Forget, gently fading into the history books. Dan Rather is busy writing new chapters, not with a typewriter, but with Substack newsletters and a modern media company. His schedule isn't just active for a 93-year-old. It's a relentless pace that would exhaust people half his age. What makes a man who has already seen it all keep going? What pushes the legendary anchor, the face of news for a generation, to master new media and build a new presence from the ground up? The answer is found in a life shaped by history, marked by controversy, and driven by a single, powerful principle that has guided him for over 70 years. This isn't a story about retirement. It's the story of how Dan Rather, at 93, is more relevant and more relentlessly engaged than ever. It's the story of a lifestyle that can only be described as insane. At 93 years old, an age when most have long since retired, legendary newsman Dan Rather is arguably working with more relevance than ever before. From his daily routine to his modern media presence, his life isn't just active. It's what many would call insane. In this video, we uncover the relentless drive and surprising habits that keep this icon a major force in American journalism. To really get how unusual Dan Rather's life is today, you have to throw out any ideas of what being 93 is supposed to look like. There are no long, quiet afternoons on the porch. Instead, there's a constant buzz of activity, a full-throttle dive into news and commentary that rivals the most energetic startups. In a recent interview, Rather summed up his daily reality with perfect clarity. I get up every morning and, as soon as my feet hit the ground, I say, "Where's the story?" That question isn't some nostalgic echo from his past. It's the starting gun for his day. This relentless hunt for the story happens in the fast-paced, ever-churning world of 21st century media. The hub for his work is News and Guts Media, the independent production company he founded in 2015. While its output has shifted focus from producing original video series, it remains the engine for his commentary. Through it, he has hosted shows like The Big Interview, where he sits down for long-form conversations with musicians and entertainers. But maybe the most surprising part of his current work is how completely he's embraced social media. He wasn't dragged onto these platforms. He mastered them. It started in 2015 when younger staffers at News and Guts convinced him to try Facebook. Rather began posting his thoughts, not in short, quippy sound bites, but in long form, deeply considered, essays that analyzed current events with the nuance that defined his TV career. Conventional wisdom said it would never work. But Rather's thoughtful posts resonated with a public starved for substance, and his page exploded, gaining over 2 million followers. He didn't stop there. He launched a Substack newsletter called Steady. The name itself is a perfect reflection of his presence, a calm, consistent voice in a chaotic world. On Steady, he writes with a freedom he never had in corporate media. He champions stories of courage, calls out political hypocrisy, and defends the core principles of democracy. The platform has become incredibly popular and influential, connecting him with a new, younger generation that knows him not as the CBS anchor, but as the wise, unflinching voice of reason in their feeds. His presence is a direct rebuttal to the idea that age makes you irrelevant. As he puts it, you either get engaged and you get engaged on the new terms, or you're out of the game. I wanted to stay in the game. And he is very much in the game. He's not just commenting, he's participating. He's a thought leader proving that a commitment to quality journalism isn't bound by technology or age. This daily grind, producing, writing, posting, engaging, isn't a hobby. It's a mission he wakes up to every single day. For a man who has already had a Hall of Fame career, this second act isn't just impressive, it's a testament to a drive that borders on superhuman. It is, by any reasonable standard, insane. How does a man who defined television news for a quarter-century become a leading voice on platforms that didn't even exist for most of his career? Dan Rather's transformation from a Big Three anchor to a digital pioneer wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate reinvention born from necessity, principle, and an unshakable belief in the power of journalism, no matter the medium. His journey into the digital wilderness began after his bitter departure from CBS in 2006. Stripped of his massive platform, many would have just retired. But Rather's identity was tied to his work. As he recently admitted, Dan Rather, CBS News, became sorta all part of my name, a part of my identity. To stop being a reporter was to stop being himself. So he adapted. His first major move was hosting Dan Rather Reports on Mark Cuban's HDNet, now Access TV, where for years he produced in-depth investigative journalism that was becoming rarer on TV. But it was launching News and Guts Media in 2015 that marked his true reinvention. The company's name is a mission statement, a call for journalism with courage and backbone, reflecting principles he felt were eroding in corporate newsrooms. On the company's website, he bridges his past and present. When I entered journalism, print and radio were king and television was an uncharted landscape. Now, a digital world beckons with new opportunities. Please join us on our journey. This wasn't just about finding a new outlet. It was about reclaiming his voice. The digital world offered something corporate media no longer could: complete editorial independence. Free from the pressures of ratings and executives, Rather could speak directly to his audience. His Facebook posts and Substack articles are raw, unfiltered Dan Rather. They are often deeply personal, weaving his own experiences as a witness to history into his analysis of today. He writes about his fears for democracy with the same passion he once brought to reporting from Vietnam or a political convention. This transition was also driven by a sharp understanding of the shifting media landscape. He saw that the audience was no longer passively waiting for a nightly newscast. They were online, scattered across countless platforms, and hungry for authenticity. He trusted that if he provided quality content, the audience would find him. As he once said, "My experience with the American public is if you trust them, they'll trust you. If you are authentic, people will listen." His success proved him right. His Substack, Steady, became a destination for those seeking depth over division. His social media commentary became must-read analysis during major political events. He didn't just learn the language of these new platforms, he bent them to his will, proving that thoughtful, long-form content could thrive. He became a case study in how to maintain journalistic integrity while adapting to new technologies. This reinvention wasn't about staying relevant for its own sake. It was about continuing his life's work. He saw a new, uncharted territory for journalism, and, just as he did as a young reporter, he ran toward it. To understand the relentless drive that pushes a 93-year-old man to run a media company, you have to go back to the dusty plains of Texas, to the son of a ditch digger and a waitress, a boy who became the first in his family to get a college degree. Dan Rather's insane work ethic wasn't born in his later years. It was forged in the fires of the 20th century, where he was a frontline witness to some of history's biggest moments. His career began humbly in 1950 as an AP reporter in Huntsville, Texas. His big break came in 1961. As the news director for the CBS affiliate in Houston, he covered the monstrous Hurricane Carla. In a stroke of genius, Rather overlaid a transparent map on the radar display, showing the storm's massive scale to a TV audience for the first time. His calm, authoritative reporting was credited with helping to evacuate over 350,000 people and save countless lives. CBS executives noticed, and by 1962 he was a network correspondent. That promotion put him directly in the path of history. In 1963, he was in Dallas coordinating coverage of President John F. Kennedy's visit. He was just beyond Dealey Plaza when the shots rang out. While the world spiraled into chaos, Rather's reporter instincts took over. He ran back to the local station, got on the phone with sources at Parkland Hospital, and based on his reporting, became one of the first journalists to inform the network that the president was dead, long before any official announcement. Recalling that moment, he explained his focus. "I had a job to do. There were no emotions. Forget about emotions. You had to keep focused." That cool-headed professionalism under unimaginable pressure became his trademark. He was promoted to White House correspondent in 1964 and was soon sent overseas, reporting from the battlefields of Vietnam in 1966. His unflinching reports brought the grim reality of the conflict into American living rooms. This experience didn't just make him a star. It deepened his understanding of power, sacrifice, and a journalist's responsibility to bear witness. Upon his return, he was assigned back to the White House, just in time to cover Richard Nixon. He became known for his aggressive questioning during a time of immense political turmoil, covering Nixon's trip to China and, most consequentially, the Watergate scandal. His relentless reporting helped define the press's role as a crucial check on power. He believed deeply in the press as a watchdog, not an attack dog, but a vigilant guardian. This period, from the shock of the Kennedy assassination to the crisis of Watergate, shaped his entire philosophy. He had seen firsthand that a free and independent press was the red-beating heart of American democracy. He learned that real news is often what powerful people don't want the public to know. That relentless pursuit of the story, no matter the obstacle, is the same defining trait we still see in him today. On March 9, 1981, Dan Rather stepped into the most coveted job in American broadcast journalism, succeeding the iconic Walter Cronkite as anchor of the CBS Evening News. For the next 24 years, he was one of the big three anchors, alongside Peter Jennings and Tom Brokaw, who guided the nation through its biggest moments. His tenure was the longest in American television history, a period where he became synonymous with the news itself. From that chair, he was a steady presence in an unsteady world, reporting on the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Gulf War, and the horrors of 9/11. His work ethic was legendary. He was often called the hardest working man in broadcast journalism, anchoring the evening news while also hosting 48 Hours and contributing to 60 Minutes Twos. His reporting was tough and direct, infused with colorful Texan sayings that became known as Ratherisms. He famously clashed with presidents from Richard Nixon to George H.W. Bush and secured exclusive interviews with figures like Saddam Hussein. For a generation, his sign-off, and that's part of our world tonight, was the nightly signal that the day's events had been chronicled. But this storied chapter came to a sudden and controversial end. In September 2004, 2 months before a presidential election, Rather anchored a 60 Minutes 2 segment questioning President George W. Bush's service in the Texas Air National Guard. The report was based on documents supposedly from Bush's late commander. Almost immediately, the authenticity of the documents came under fire. Bloggers and experts pointed to anachronisms, like fonts that seemed to come from a modern word processor, not a 1970s typewriter. CBS and Rather initially defended the story, but their position quickly became untenable. Their source admitted to misleading CBS about the document's origins. On September 20, 2004, CBS retracted the story, and Rather issued an apology on air. "It was a mistake," he said. "CBS News deeply regrets it. Also, I want to say, personally and directly, I'm sorry." An independent investigation found that the network had failed to properly authenticate the documents. The fallout was immense. On March 9, 2005, exactly 24 years to the day after he started, Dan Rather signed off from the CBS Evening News for the last time. He stayed at the network for another year before his contract ended, bringing his 44-year career at CBS to a bitter conclusion. The controversy, known as Rathergate, cost him his anchor chair and threatened to become the final defining chapter of his legacy. For most people, that public and painful exit from CBS News would have been a career-ending humiliation. In a recent interview, his first on CBS in nearly 2 decades, Rather admitted the depth of the wound. "Of course it was the lowest point," he said. "I gave CBS News everything I had. They didn't have anybody who worked any harder than I did." The world expected him to retire, but Dan Rather's spirit proved unbreakable. He refused to let his departure define him. He saw it not as an end, but as a forced liberation. He filed a $70 million lawsuit against CBS, accusing the network of making him a scapegoat. While he ultimately didn't win in court, it signaled he wouldn't go quietly. More importantly, he got back to work. He first found a home on Mark Cuban's AXS TV hosting Dan Rather Reports, and later The Big Interview, showcasing his skill as a long-form conversationalist with artists and cultural figures. He even contributed to the progressive YouTube channel The Young Turks in 2018. These weren't the actions of a man winding down, they were the actions of a journalist determined to find a platform, any platform, to continue his work. The real turning point, however, was his full embrace of the digital age. This was where he found his new, unfiltered voice. Launching News and Guts Media was a declaration of independence, a commitment to fearless reporting. He started writing on social media, not with the polished tone of a network anchor, but with the passion of a citizen deeply concerned about his country. This transition was fueled by a core belief, hardened by his exit from CBS, that journalism must be free from corporate and political pressures. He'd long criticized the corporatization of news, once writing that news is a business, but it is also a public trust. Now, on his own, he could live that principle without compromise. His Substack, Steady, became his personal news desk. There, he wasn't just commenting on headlines, he was writing about the erosion of democratic norms, the importance of civic engagement, and the power of courage. What's incredible is that he found a whole new, younger audience that had no memory of him as the stoic CBS anchor. To them, he was this wise, straight-talking elder on their social media feeds, a voice of clarity in a polarized time. He had successfully built a second act on his own terms. He didn't just survive the fall, he used it to build something new, something independent, something that was purely and authentically Dan Rather. His spirit wasn't just unbreakable, it was defiant. So what exactly compels a man in his 10th decade to stay so deeply engaged in the daily battles of American life? It's not just a love for journalism, it's a philosophy, a moral compass that finds its clearest expression in his Substack, Steady. It represents a commitment to consistency, courage, and the core principles he believes are essential for democracy. At the heart of this philosophy is the belief that journalism isn't passive observation, but an active moral pursuit. Reflecting on his time covering the civil rights movement, he explained that you can't separate moral horror from objective news gathering. Seeing injustice up close instilled in him a responsibility to not just report facts, but to shine a light. This belief drives his work today as he writes about threats to voting rights and the rise of political extremism. Another pillar of his philosophy is an almost sacred reverence for the First Amendment. As a longtime prominent supporter of the Committee to Protect Journalists, he sees the press as a watchdog on power. This view was forged during the Nixon years and has only intensified. He actively pushes back against attacks on the media, reminding his audience that holding leaders accountable is a cornerstone of American history. In his view, a journalist's highest calling is to tell the stories that somebody somewhere, particularly somebody in power, doesn't want you to know. It was this very principle that led to the report that ended his CBS career, a painful irony he acknowledges. Finally, what keeps him going is a relentless optimism and faith in the American people. Despite witnessing the darkest moments of the last 70 years, he maintains a fundamental trust in the audience. He believes that if you give people the unvarnished truth, they will ultimately make the right decisions. This faith fuels his fight against misinformation, and it's why he spends hours crafting his online posts, believing thoughtful analysis can cut through the noise. This isn't a philosophy he just preaches. It's how he lives. It's why he still gets up every day asking, "Where's the story?" He isn't working for a paycheck or for fame. He's had plenty of both. He's working because he feels a profound sense of duty. He sees a country at a crossroads and believes his voice, experience, and steady perspective are needed now more than ever. His life's work has been to provide context, bear witness, and hold power to account. At 93, he sees no reason to stop. His fight isn't about legacy, it's about purpose. And for Dan Rather, that purpose is as urgent as it was when he first walked into a Texas newsroom over 7 decades ago. What do you think about Dan Rather's incredible second act? Does his story inspire you? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories about legendary figures and their incredible lives, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. Dan Rather's life is a sprawling epic of American history, told from the front row. He's a man who stood near the Texas School Book Depository, walked the muddy fields of Vietnam, and faced down presidents. For 24 years, he was the trusted voice that brought the world into millions of homes. That alone is a remarkable legacy. But the truly insane part of his story isn't what he did then, but what he's doing now. At 93, he has refused to become a monument to a bygone era. He has dismantled the pedestal, rolled up his sleeves, and waded into the messy, chaotic arena of modern media. He has transformed himself from a television icon into a digital pioneer, building a new platform on the foundations of old-school journalistic integrity. His life is a powerful testament to adaptation, resilience, and the enduring power of a singular mission. He is living proof that a life of purpose has no expiration date. The same drive that propelled him from a small Texas town to the pinnacle of journalism now has him crafting essays for Steady and engaging with followers online. He's still the hardest working man in broadcast journalism. Only now, his broadcast is the entire internet. His story is more than a biography. It's a lesson in what it means to stay engaged, to keep fighting for what you believe in, and to never, ever stop looking for the story. For the CBS Evening News,